From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In the NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Just for a moment, let's take a trip back to the year 2002. Spider-Man dominated the box office.
Wait! Who are you?
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Avril Lavigne was on the radio. And Colorado was having a brutal summer. One of the largest and most destructive wildfires in state history raged in the mountains, and reservoir levels dropped amid the scorching heat. You might look at 2002 as a turning point. It was the year Colorado cities got serious about how they use water and how to waste less of it. Luke Runyon is a reporter who specializes in covering water issues. In a news story, he looks at how things have played out since that turning point and how many Colorado cities grew dramatically in that time, but also shrank their water usage. Luke started by painting a picture of why 2002 was such a jolt for Coloradans.
It was hugely important for, I think, the way that Colorado communities view their water supplies and their future when it comes to water. 2002 still stands as basically the drought of record in a lot of parts of Colorado and in the Colorado River Basin. It was intensely, intensely dry. It was so severe that you had restrictions on water use that played out not just in 2002, but for several years after the fact, so that those reservoirs could recover.
Your story looks at Colorado Springs as a model. Colorado Springs grew by about 40% since 2000, but also scaled back its water usage to 1980s levels, which seems really kind of almost counterintuitive. How did they do that?
They followed a playbook that a lot of Colorado communities have used. So I guess there's a few different reasons for why that drop occurred while their population was growing. One was this sort of nationwide push to swap out fixtures in homes. So swapping out old toilets and sinks and shower heads. But at the same time, you had a moving focus taking water conservation from what was happening inside the home to outside the home. So there started to be a lot more focus on, the types of landscaping and green spaces that are in a lot of our cities. So Colorado Springs, over the course of, about 20 years, has started instituting turf conversion programs, taking Kentucky bluegrass lawns, turning them into more native grasses that use a lot less water, focusing on using gray water and other non-potable sources for watering parks.
Right. How typical is Colorado Springs in terms of how Western cities responded to both growing populations and a drier climate?
Well, I think it's kind of surprising, but Colorado Springs isn't, the outlier here. The city is a good example of what's playing out in a lot of Western and Southwestern cities, which is, figuring out how to grow your population while using a lot less water. It's really kind of like a counterintuitive thing. You can point to almost any major city on the map in the Southwest and they'd be able to show you that data.
Well, for people who want to take some sort of action, if I live along the Front Range, what are the best things I can do to limit my water consumption?
I think these days, really, the focus is on outdoor water use. Because we've made this big push towards more water efficient fixtures, the savings is really happening outside the home. It's happening in people's yards. It's happening in people's landscaping. And so as best you can, reduce the types of plants that you grow outside. Kentucky bluegrass, while it's very green and very lush,
very pretty,
is very pretty. It uses a lot of water. And so that's really where we've seen a lot of the focus of urban water conservation these days is on removing turf grass and planting native plants that use a lot less water, but still are beautiful and add a nice element of character to our neighborhoods.
Luke, your story, though, made me think about how cities might be in a tough spot if they're seeing the population growth, but they also have already routine limits on activities like watering lawns, and then another drought hits. To what extent are communities in Colorado in a precarious position?
I think if you talk to city leaders right now, they'll give themselves a big pat on the back for the conservation that they've been able to do over the last couple decades. Colorado Springs has been able to reduce its total water use by about 25% over the last couple decades.
Right.
Doing that again is going to be extremely challenging. They say, we found the waste, we found the inefficiency already, the easy stuff has already been done. Any conservation that happens after this is going to be much more expensive, much more strategic, much more targeted. And so it's just harder to do. I talked to Aurora for this series as well, and they're looking at future projections out to like 2060. And there are, population trends that are going on in Aurora that if they had really severe droughts, back-to-back dry years, they would really struggle with the water supply that they have right now just to meet people's basic needs for water. Not talking about landscaping, not talking about watering grass at all, literally just the water that flows through your tap in your house. And so, I think while a lot of cities are really proud of the success that they've made, I think they're not resting on their laurels and are thinking about future growth, future climate change projections, and thinking like we still have a lot of work to do.
Luke, this trend of population growth amid smarter water use is sort of a pleasant surprise. What gives you hope after reporting this story?
I think this is a really good example of just how adaptable we can be when we're given constraints. A lot of cities, I think, until some of these drought conditions were being seen in the early 2000s, were just using water like there's no tomorrow. And really, the 2002 drought sort of served as a hard reset towards how we view our relationship to our water supply. And I think as climate change makes our region hotter and potentially drier, we're going to have to make even tougher choices about our water use. But we can do that. As one source put it to me in doing this story, he was like, it would be crazy if we just threw up our hands and said, oh, we ran out of water. We all have to move out of, name your giant metro city. And I think it's a good point, like we still have a lot of give. We still have a lot of slack in the system. And it's just a matter of making the tough choices of what we're willing to give up to live with less water.
Luke Runyon is a journalist with the University of Colorado's Water Desk. His latest story is part of a series meant to dispel myths around water and climate change in the West. And his series on the Colorado River recently won a National Edward R. Murrow Journalism Award. You can find Thirst Gap on your favorite podcast platform and at kunc.org. That's it for us today on In the NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks for listening.